Are you kidding me? I was out there with a post digger, minding my own business on a Saturday morning, when I heard it. That sharp nasal voice that could cut glass. Excuse me, what exactly do you think you're doing? I looked up, sweat dripping from my forehead, gloves covered in red clay. A woman in her mid-50s stood just beyond my driveway line, arms crossed so tightly her veins bulged. Blonde bob haircut, oversized sunglasses despite the shade, HOA badge clipped to her fleece vest like she was patrolling a crime scene. Before I could answer, she took a photo of me with her phone. "This is a violation," she snapped. "Fences must be pre-approved. That post is an eyesore." I opened my mouth to explain. Permits, surveys, property lines. But she'd already turned on her heel and was storming back to her house. 3 minutes later, a sheriff's cruiser rolled up like I'd been caught bearing a body. Want to hear how that went down? Stick around. And if you've ever had to deal with an HOA tyrant like this, hit that subscribe button. You're going to want to see how this ends. The officer approached slowly, eyes flicking between me, my digging equipment, and the wooden posts I'd stacked neatly beside my garage. "Sir, we got a call about unauthorized construction," he said, resting his hand casually near his belt. "Really?" I said, gesturing to the ground. "I'm building a fence. On my property." He looked down at the notepad. "Neighbor says it violates HOA regulations." "My property line is here." I pointed at the newly planted flags. "This is within code. County approved, and I've got the documents inside if you'd like to see them." "Mind if I take a look?" he asked. I led him to the kitchen, handed over the stamped permit and boundary survey. As he read them, I watched through the window as she stood on her porch, arms folded like a hawk guarding her nest. The officer flipped the paper, nodded slowly, and handed it back. "Looks clean to me. As long as it's under 6 feet and doesn't block sight lines, you're good." "She called the cops on me for building a fence," I muttered, walking him back outside. "She calls us a lot," he said under his breath. I watched as he crossed the street and spoke briefly with her. Her arms flailed, her voice carried across the lawn. He pointed at me, then at the survey in his hand. Her face twisted into something between shock and rage. Then she stormed back inside, slamming the door hard enough to rattle her window panes. 10 minutes later, an email hit my inbox. Subject: violation notice, unapproved structure. It was from the HOA board. Attached were blurry photos of me digging, a highlighted section of the HOA handbook, and a notice of immediate cease and desist. Fine, $500. That's when I learned her name. Linda Matthews, HOA president, self-appointed neighborhood enforcer. And apparently this was only the beginning. Later that day, while I tried to resume my work, I noticed her again, peeking out from behind her curtains like a cartoon villain. I ignored it. Just a neighbor having a bad day, I told myself. Maybe she'd cool off. But then I found the second letter on my windshield. "You are now under formal review by the Architectural Compliance Committee," a committee that, I would later learn, consisted of exactly one person. Linda. I started documenting everything. Dates, times, photos. My friend Nick, a civil engineer, confirmed my permit was solid. "You're fine," he said. "She's just bluffing." Still, I paused construction, not out of fear but strategy. I wanted to see how far she'd go. The next morning, a different email arrived. "Immediate HOA meeting scheduled to address community standards breaches. Scheduled for Monday night." Less than 72 hours after the first hole I dug, I showed up naturally. The meeting was held at the clubhouse, a beige, overly lit room that smelled like plastic chairs and bad coffee. A dozen people sat in folding chairs. Linda stood at the front like a prosecutor addressing a jury. "We have a situation," she began, voice loud and theatrical. "A resident has undertaken construction without approval. It's a breach of protocol and a danger to our aesthetic cohesion." I raised my hand. Would now be a good time to clarify that my fence is legal under state and county law and not subject to HOA jurisdiction since it's outside the architectural easement? She blinked. "That's irrelevant. The HOA has standards." "No," I said calmly. "The HOA has overreach. and I'm not going to let you decide how I live on my own land." The room stirred. Someone in the back mumbled, "He's got a point." Linda's face twitched. "If we allow this, we allow chaos. Everyone will build what they want. Fences, sheds, plastic flamingos." Someone else chuckled. "I like flamingos." I stood holding up my permit. "This fence is legal. I have every right to build it. The sheriff confirmed it. But if this committee wants to escalate this further, we'll be doing it in court." Linda was quiet, just for a second, but I saw it. The fear, the realization that maybe, just maybe, she picked the wrong guy. And I hadn't even started the real fight yet. By Tuesday morning, I had 3 new emails, 2 printed notices taped to my front door, and 1 voicemail from someone named Stan on behalf of the HOA Compliance Committee asking me to please respect community values. I hadn't even put the first panel of the fence up yet. It wasn't just annoying anymore. It was coordinated. The second notice was the most absurd. It claimed my wheelbarrow, which was leaning against my garage, constituted equipment storage in public view and was subject to a $150 fine. The wheelbarrow that I was actively using. For construction approved by the county. I laughed. Then I opened a new document on my laptop titled HOA Interference. Documented events. Entry 1, Saturday, 9:17 a.m. Verbal confrontation with HOA President Linda Matthews regarding fence posts. Entry 2, Saturday, 9:21 a.m. Police arrive. Entry 3, Saturday, 12:42 p.m. Email notice, unapproved structure. Entry 4, Sunday, 10:08 a.m. Windshield letter. Entry 5, Monday, 7 p.m. HOA emergency meeting. Entry 6, Tuesday, 6:30 a.m. Fine for visible equipment. It was just the beginning. Wednesday, I caught her measuring my grass with a retractable ruler. She stood at the edge of my lawn, phone in one hand, ruler in the other, mumbling numbers like she was calculating missile trajectories. When I stepped outside, she didn't flinch, just scribbled something on her clipboard and walked off. 2 hours later, violation notice. Grass exceeds 2.5 inches. Fine, $100. That's when I realized this wasn't about a fence. This was personal. Linda didn't like being questioned. She didn't like someone building something without asking her. And now she was going to try to break me by 1,000 paper cuts. So I did what I do best. I studied, dug into the HOA bylaws, printed all 42 pages, highlighted every section about structural restrictions, private property, visual obstructions, and authority limitations. Guess what I found? Section 4.3c. Homeowners may construct fences on their deeded property, provided such fences do not exceed 6 feet in height, do not obstruct public walkways, and adhere to county or municipal code. Approval is recommended but not required if construction does not encroach on HOA-maintained land. That one clause? It made Linda's entire war pointless. My property line, as confirmed by a surveyor, did not touch HOA land, not even by an inch. And the height of my fence? 5 feet 8 inches. I printed 3 copies of that page and pinned one inside my garage, one by my front door, and mailed one to the HOA office. Certified, return receipt requested. Friday, she showed up in my driveway. No clipboard this time, just rage. Her voice was quiet but shaking with fury. "You're trying to make a mockery of everything this community stands for." "No," I said calmly. "I'm trying to build a fence." She took a breath. "I've had 6 complaints about your attitude. The neighborhood doesn't want conflict. Then maybe the neighborhood should stop fining me for owning a shovel." She stepped forward. "You know what kind of people build fences? The ones who want to shut everyone out, who don't care about community. I know what kind of people call the cops on their neighbors over wooden posts," I said. "Bullies with too much free time." That's when she lost it. "I am the president of this HOA. You don't get to disrespect me and ignore protocol. If you continue this defiance, you'll be fined into compliance. We can put liens on your property, Mr. Carson. You have no idea how hard we can make this." I smiled. "Actually, I do. That's why I've been recording this entire conversation. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping on a dock. She turned and stormed off without another word. Saturday morning, I started building again, this time with my Bluetooth speaker playing loud enough for her to hear from her porch. Not obnoxiously loud, just loud enough to make a point. Post after post went in. I worked slow, methodical, checking each measurement, each anchor, each board. By noon, I had 6 panels up. 2 kids from down the street rode by on bikes and waved. "Looks cool," one of them shouted. "Thing," I said. At 12:43, another email. Violation notice, noise disturbance. Of course, but this one had a surprise. Attached was a PDF, official order to cease construction pending review by HOA Compliance Board. It had a fake legal template look, complete with a pixelated watermark and an incorrect address for the county building department. It wasn't just amateur, it was laughable. That's when I decided enough defense. Time to counter. I called my old classmate Danielle, a real estate attorney. "I've got a neighbor trying to use HOA power like a personal dictatorship," I explained. "Can I sue for harassment?" "Possibly," she said. "But if you want leverage, start with a formal demand for cease interference. Certified mail. Mention State Code 441.17. Undue encroachment of homeowner rights by non-elected parties." "I thought she was elected," Danielle paused. "Is she? You've seen the election records?" I hadn't, but now I wanted to. Monday morning, I submitted a written request for HOA financials and voting records. Legally, as a homeowner, I had that right. No response. Wednesday, I sent a follow-up. Still nothing. Friday, I sent a notice. Failure to respond to records request within 10 business days constitutes a breach under HOA Transparency Act. Saturday, I received a hand-delivered letter in an unmarked envelope. "Due to recent hostility and legal threats, you are no longer welcome at HOA public forums until further notice." That was it. She just put in writing that I was banned from public HOA meetings, the same ones required by law to be open to all homeowners. I smiled. Now I had more than bylaws. I had ammunition, and Linda had no idea she was one bad move away from losing everything. The clubhouse buzzed with low conversation as I stepped inside. Folding chairs lined the room, neighbors clustered in small knots, murmuring, casting glances toward the front, where a long plastic table waited for the HOA board. Only one chair behind it was occupied. Linda. She sat rigid, a thick binder in front of her, glasses perched low on her nose, a red blazer practically glowing under the fluorescent lights. Her smile, if you could call it that, didn't reach her eyes. She tapped a pen against her clipboard like a judge about to render a verdict. I took a seat near the back, ignoring the stares. A few nods came my way. Neutral, curious. No one wanted to pick sides yet. At exactly 7 p.m., Linda stood. "This emergency session has been called," she began, "to address continued disregard for HOA guidelines by resident Jacob Carson." She let the name hang in the air like smoke. People turned to look at me. I didn't blink. "Mr. Carson has repeatedly defied architectural review requirements. His aggressive tone in written communications, along with unpermitted construction and a history of non-cooperation, has created a hostile atmosphere in our community." Hostile? I almost laughed. She continued, flipping pages in her binder with theatrical flair. "We have received multiple complaints from residents regarding noise, visual disruption, and non-compliance." "Are you going to read those complaints out loud?" I asked. She paused. "Excuse me. The complaints, I'd like them entered into the meeting minutes, with names attached as required." Her jaw tightened. "Anonymous complaints are allowed under HOA policy." I opened my binder. "Actually, Section 6.2 says all complaints must be documented, signed, and made available to any homeowner upon request. I requested them last week. Got nothing." A ripple of whispers moved through the crowd. Someone near the front said quietly, "Wait, is that true?" Linda shifted behind her binder. "We've had problems with documentation recently." I took a step forward. "Linda, are you saying you issued fines and sanctions against me based on undocumented, unsigned, and unverifiable complaints?" She opened her mouth. closed it. This isn't a courtroom, Mr. Carson. I smiled. No, but it might be soon. Someone chuckled. The air shifted. I felt it. Control slipping. Let's talk about this hostile atmosphere, I said, addressing the room now. I've received 7 notices in 9 days for digging holes, using a wheelbarrow, playing music, and having grass that was 0.3 inches too long. I've had the police called on me. I've been banned from open forums for building a permitted fence. I held up the permit. Stamped, approved, verified, county code compliant. Linda stood abruptly. You don't understand how HOAs work. We have standards. Yes, I said. And those standards are supposed to apply to everyone equally. So here's my question. Who approved the new stone mailbox at 318 Willow? It's 2 feet taller than regulation. Or the red paint on the door at 412 Oak? Not on the approved pallet. She flinched. Small, but I saw it. Because from what I can tell, I continued, enforcement in this community depends entirely on whether you personally like someone. Now the murmurs weren't whispers. They were statements. He's not wrong. My grass is longer than his. She fined me for having Halloween lights up 1 day late. Linda banged her pen on the table. This meeting is out of order. No, I said. This meeting is the first time anyone here has gotten to ask what gives you the right to rule this place like a dictator. Silence. I let it hang, then added, and I'm not the only one who thinks so. That's when Tom stood up. Tom Carter, mid-60s, gruff ex-contractor with shoulders like cinder blocks and a beard that could hide a bird's nest. I've been quiet, he said, voice low but steady. But last year she fined me $300 because my grandkids left chalk drawings on the sidewalk. Said it was graffiti. I paid it, but I've been watching. He nodded at me. Kid's not wrong. We all just put up with it because we thought we had to. Linda opened her mouth, but another voice cut in. Margaret Evans. Sweet elderly widow who baked cookies for block parties and always kept her hydrangeas perfect. She told me my porch chairs were visually offensive, Margaret said, voice trembling. They were my husband's. He picked them out before he passed. The room was no longer with her. I think it's time we voted, I said. Motion to suspend the president's authority pending a formal audit and election review. You can't do that, Linda snapped. I was elected by majority vote. This is harassment. I held up a copy of the bylaws. Article 7.5. If 10% of homeowners present a formal motion citing abuse or misconduct, a vote of no confidence may be held. I have 17 signatures. We only need 9. Linda looked around. This is chaos, she hissed. You're turning this place into anarchy. No, I said. We're turning it back into a neighborhood. The room erupted into discussion, some angry, some relieved. Linda tried shouting over them, but no one listened. Her voice had lost its authority. It was just noise now. I sat back in my chair, heart pounding, adrenaline still humming in my veins. This wasn't over, but something had cracked. And once a crack starts, it only goes one direction. The next morning I found tire tracks on my lawn. Deep ones, like someone had spun their wheels in anger. I didn't need to guess who. Linda's SUV had distinctive treads, and the neighbor across the street confirmed it in a hushed voice over coffee. She was parked there at 2 a.m., he said, engine running, just staring at your house. I nodded, not surprised. Ever since the HOA meeting imploded, Linda had gone quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't mean retreat, but recalibration. And I knew better than to celebrate early. That afternoon, I received an envelope, hand-delivered, no return address. Inside, a formal-looking document titled Notice of Pending Lien Action, typed in all caps, full of legal-sounding language, and completely fake. Danielle, my lawyer friend, confirmed it in seconds. No filing number, no court reference, and it's unsigned. Just intimidation. That's what I thought, I said. She's escalating, Danielle warned. You need to protect yourself. Start the complaint process. I already had. Over the last week, I'd compiled a thick file, every violation notice, every photo, each bogus fine, and now this false lien. I submitted it to the county office for HOA oversight. along with a request to audit Crestwood Meadows HOA leadership conduct and financial activity. But the real game was just beginning. Through public records and a few online sleuthing tools, I found something curious. The last 3 annual HOA elections had no recorded ballots. Not one. According to the minutes Linda published, all elections were confirmed by acclamation, a phrase that legally means everyone agreed, but practically meant no one was invited. Digging deeper, I discovered HOA funds had increased dues 3 years in a row, supposedly for security upgrades and landscaping enhancements. But when I requested vendor contracts, the HOA office, essentially a locked mailbox on the side of the clubhouse, gave me nothing. So I dug into the county vendor registry. Guess what I found? The landscaping company we'd been using, Green Ridge Solutions, didn't exist in any registry, but a business with the same address, Matthews Property Maintenance, LLC, owned by none other than Linda Matthews. It got worse. The security upgrade charges were paid to a company called Brimstone Monitoring, registered in another state, dissolved 2 years ago. But the HOA check was written just 6 months ago. And the deposit trail? I had a friend at the bank trace the routing number. Same account as Matthews Property Maintenance. Linda wasn't just abusing power, she was embezzling money from us. I organized it all, created a full report, sent it certified mail to the state HOA compliance board, and another copy to a contact at the local news outlet who loved homeowner drama. Then I waited. 3 days later, the notice appeared on the community bulletin board. Special emergency HOA session. Attendance mandatory. The language was stiff, nervous, like someone trying to regain control with a louder voice. I showed up early. Linda stood at the front, shoulders back, chin lifted, surrounded by her loyalists, fewer than before. She scanned the room with cold calculation, eyes locking on me like I was a fire she meant to smother. Before the meeting started, I handed out packets, neatly stapled, titled, Unauthorized Financial Activity and Procedural Violations, Crestwood Meadows HOA. Neighbors flipped pages. Eyebrows rose. Whispers spread. Linda's face lost its color by the second page. She tried to start the meeting with her usual bravado. Before we begin, I want to address the smear campaign being waged by a disruptive element in our community. I raised my hand. Objection. These aren't smears. These are bank records, signed checks, shell companies. Someone near the front, Margaret Evans, spoke softly but firmly. I didn't vote to raise my dues. No one I know did. Tom Carter chimed in. She said the HOA paid $20,000 for new cameras. I fixed cameras for 30 years. Those things on the clubhouse are from Costco. The room was slipping fast. Linda tried to regain footing. These claims are false, fabricated, slander. I stood up, opened my laptop, and mirrored my screen to the projector, an HDMI cable I'd plugged in while she wasn't looking. The feed popped up. Slide 1, check number 2841, made out to Matthews Property Maintenance. Slide 2, business registration record, listing Linda Matthews as owner. Slide 3, a photo of the HOA clubhouse, security camera still wrapped in plastic, never installed. Gasps spread like wildfire. This isn't a conflict of interest, I said. It's theft, and it's gone on for years. Linda lunged toward the laptop, yanking the HDMI cable out. This is illegal. You can't just hijack a meeting. Actually, I said calmly, HOA bylaws say any member may present relevant concerns during open session, which you declared 10 minutes ago. Someone near the back yelled, "We need a vote, right now." Linda shouted back, "This is mob rule." But she was already drowning in the noise. I stepped aside. Margaret stood up, hands shaking, but voice firm. I move for immediate suspension of the president's authority pending full audit. Tom seconded. Then the hands went up, one by one, almost all of them. Linda turned in place, eyes wild. "This isn't legal. I am the HOA." "No," I said. "You're a fraud." The room fell silent. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Linda stormed out, face twisted, phone pressed to her ear, probably dialing a lawyer or the police. Again. Didn't matter. That night I got an email from the county. Your complaint has been reviewed and accepted. A formal investigation into Crestwood Meadows HOA has been opened. Thank you for your documentation. I closed my laptop, walked outside, and finished screwing in the last panel of my fence. It was barely sunrise when the email hit my inbox. Subject: legal threat. Immediate cease and desist sender. Matthews Legal Counsel. No reply at legalresponsefast.com. The message was laughable. A block of poorly formatted text accusing me of tortious interference, cyber harassment, and public endangerment. No firm name, no letterhead, no signature, no actual attorney. Linda had graduated from fake fines to fake lawyers. I forwarded it to Danielle with the subject line, "How desperate is this?" Her reply came back 5 minutes later. I've seen stronger cases written in crayon, but documented. Everything's useful. I added it to the ever-growing folder titled Linda Implosion. That same morning, a sheriff's deputy stopped by, polite, professional. Just following up on a report, he said. Allegations of harassment, trespassing, digital slander. From a Ms. Linda Matthews, I handed him the certified letters from the county and the HOA board's vote results. Also, I said, she's no longer HOA president. Suspended by vote, pending investigation. He reviewed the documents, nodded slowly. We've had prior interactions with her, he admitted. I'll note everything. No charges filed today, but I suggest you stay civil. I always have been, I said. She's the one driving across my lawn at night. He blinked. That was her. Got the footage if you need it. His lips twitched. I might. He left without incident, but it was clear Linda was spinning out. By noon, 5 residents had reached out privately, people I barely knew thanking me, sharing stories. One had been fined $200 for having a lawn ornament visible from the street. Another was threatened with community expulsion for leaving a garden hose uncoiled. One message stood out, from a man named Arturo who lived near the back cul-de-sac. He attached a scanned copy of a letter from last year. Linda had fined him $400 for unauthorized paint color on a garage that hadn't been painted in 10 years. The kicker? Attached to that letter was a suggested vendor list. Number 1, Matthews Residential Coatings. She'd tried to funnel him to her own paint company. I called Arturo. She sent her cousin out with a quote, he told me, 3 times the normal rate. When I refused, suddenly I had 3 more violations in a week. I added it to the file. By the weekend, the story broke. The local paper published a front-page spread, HOA president under investigation for fraud, abuse, and intimidation. They quoted me, carefully, and included screenshots of Linda's fake companies, forged letters, and the results of the emergency HOA meeting. There was even a photo of my fence, neatly stained, clean lines, precisely built. The headline underneath? The fence that broke the queen. By Monday, the fallout began in earnest. The state's Department of HOA Oversight formally froze all Crestwood Meadows accounts. They issued subpoenas to local banks, began interviewing past board members, and requested statements from residents. Linda's name was everywhere, and she didn't like it. She started patrolling the neighborhood on foot, clutching a folder and hissing at anyone who didn't look away fast enough. When she saw me, she walked directly toward my driveway. I hope you're proud, she said, voice tight. You've destroyed this community. I've uncovered theft, I replied. The destruction was already there. You just hid it behind fake fines and fake votes. She opened her folder, pulled out another document. Here, cease and desist, delivered in person. I looked it over. Same amateur formatting. A spelling error in the second paragraph. This is not a legal document, I said calmly. And if you approach me again, I'll file for a restraining order. Her face flushed red. You think you've won? I have connections. Friends on the state board. The courts don't care about your little vendetta. I didn't reply. Just stepped back, pulled out my phone, and hit record. Linda froze. You're recording me? I'm protecting myself. She turned and marched off, muttering curses under her breath. 2 days later, the next HOA meeting took place, this time under the supervision of a state representative. Linda wasn't there. Instead, Tom Carter sat at the head of the table. We voted to remove Linda Matthews from any HOA involvement moving forward, he said simply, effective immediately. Pending legal action, all financial decisions will be managed by an independent accountant. Applause followed. Not loud, but steady, like something cracking open after years under pressure. Then Margaret stood up. I've lived here 32 years, she said softly. I love this place. I still do. But somewhere along the way, fear replaced community. Let's never let that happen again. No one said a word, but everyone nodded. Afterward, Tom pulled me aside. There's talk of disbanding the HOA entirely, replacing it with a neighborhood committee. You in? I smiled. Only if the new job doesn't include measuring grass. He chuckled. Deal. That night, as I sat on my back porch, drink in hand, fence casting long shadows under the setting sun, Sophie texted me. They're replaying your news interview. You actually sound like a responsible adult. Weird. Don't get used to it, I replied. But I did feel something new. Peace. Not just because I'd won, but because the community had finally woken up. One fence, one fight, one voice at a time. And Linda, she disappeared. Her house went on the market the following week. Rumors said she fled to Florida, someplace with no HOA fitting. The tyrant dethroned by the one thing she tried hardest to suppress. Someone who wouldn't back down. Moving day came with the kind of weather you pray for. Cool breeze, soft sun, not a cloud in the sky. A neighbor I barely knew brought over coffee. Figured you earned this, she said with a smile, nodding at the half-built deck I was finishing out back. The sound of hammers, drills, laughter. Not mine alone this time. Tom showed up with his truck and 2 folding tables. Margaret came with a pan of something that smelled like cinnamon and vanilla. Even the 2 teens who used to silently bike past my house offered to help unload lumber. The neighborhood felt different, like something had been unlocked, not because of the fence, but because the fear was gone. Linda's house was empty, the blinds drawn, the flower beds dry, her surveillance cameras removed from every gable. No curtain twitched, no voice screeched from behind a mailbox. The ghost of her presence lingered in cracked sidewalks and outdated rules of community signs, but nothing alive. Still, the damage she'd done had been real. I found out from Sophie, who now referred to herself as neighborhood press secretary, that over 15 residents had filed formal complaints to the state. 6 of them included financial damages, and the HOA board voted unanimously to dissolve the organization altogether. In its place, they were forming a simple neighborhood association with no enforcement power. Voluntary, transparent. No clipboard queens allowed. My fence, by the way, stood proud. 6 feet of clean cedar panels, perfectly within code. One neighbor even asked for my contractor's info. I told him it was me. Oh, he said, I thought you were a lawyer. Close, I smiled. I just got tired of watching good people lose. The final touch came on Sunday afternoon. I walked out with a small wooden sign I'd carved myself. Nothing flashy, just a clean sanded slab. On it, I burned the words in block lettering. Private property. Respect is welcome. Permission isn't required. I drilled it into the last post of the fence, stepped back, and exhaled. That was it. The border had been claimed, not against the neighborhood, but for it. A symbol of boundaries, earned space, and a reminder that authority isn't power if it's built on fear. That night we held a party. Not official, not on any calendar. Just people. Kids with juice boxes, adults with beers, old folks in lawn chairs. Sophie live-streamed parts of it, narrating with all the energy of a sports commentator. Here we have Mr. Carson, defender of liberty, enjoying a grilled bratwurst while ignoring HOA Code 17B. No mustard stains allowed. Laughter echoed from every corner of the yard. And then, like some poetic final act, one of the little kids ran up holding something in his tiny hand. "Is this yours, Heinkecht?" he asked. I looked down. A garden gnome. Chipped hat, faded paint, a crack running across one eye. "No," I said slowly, "but I think I know who it belonged to." I took it gently and placed it next to the sign on the fence, nestled between two rocks. Not as a joke, not out of spite, but as a memorial to the kind of rule that forgets it serves. The sky turned gold. The fire pit glowed. People shared stories, not of revenge, but of return to something they'd almost lost. Community, shared space, trust. As the last guest filtered out and Sophie collected her stream gear, she glanced at me. "You gonna miss the war?" I shook my head. The war never mattered, only the win. And this time, the win wasn't just mine. The next morning I got up early, sat on the porch, coffee in hand, no new notices, no patrols, just birds, a half-done crossword, and the distant sound of Tom cursing at a hammer. Then my phone buzzed, a comment on the news site article. "Every neighborhood has a Linda. The difference is whether it also has a Jacob." I read it twice, then smiled. Not because I agreed, but because I knew it was never really about me. It was about all the people who thought they couldn't say no, who thought that silence was the price of peace, who forgot that fences can keep bad things out, but they can also protect everything worth building, even if it starts with a single post. So to you, watching, reading, nodding, maybe from behind your own line of trees, your own HOA threat, your own quiet battle, let me just say, build the damn fence and make sure the first nail goes in straight, because if they ever try to tear it down again, you'll already be holding the hammer.